Hello Resistors, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is my first real video about Zimbabwe in 2025. Now, I've made a couple of videos talking about how to make money online in Zimbabwe and Africa. I mean, I make those videos every now and again, but when it comes to Zimbabwe issues, this is like my first real video for this year. I mean, sometimes I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to talk about Zimbabwe issues anymore. Let me just, stay out of it. But guess what? It doesn't work. I always find myself getting pulled because at the end of the day, I am a Zimbabwean. Zimbabwe has got my heart. It is what it is. So anyway, I digress. The reason I'm making this video is to talk about Zimbabwe and the things that we have normalized in Zimbabwe that are not normal. Because having lived in the UK, by the way, I just want to say that there's a video that I made and I was talking about comparing Zimbabwe to other countries in the UK and other countries in Europe and so on. And in that video, I said it is not fair to compare European standards of the West to the Zimbabwean standards. Yeah, I was reflecting on that. And while I still stand by that, because I just feel that there are certain things that we shouldn't really compare, and because of our history and the fact that we are still grappling with some of these issues from our past. However, having said that, there are certain things that are basic, and I've been reflecting on this, and I realized that actually, no, I can't say that. I can't say that it is not fair for us to compare or to want the same standards for ourselves as Zimbabweans, because those are like basic things that we ought to be, living by as Zimbabweans, as Africans, really. So these are things that I want to talk about in this video, things that we have normalized, that we've got no business normalizing. And having lived in the UK for 25 years, there are certain things that I've come to appreciate about the UK, things like observing the law, things like, having that social contract. I'll give you a real example. I was in Zimbabwe in December 2023, so it's been a year now since I've been to Zimbabwe. And when I went that December for my holiday, there are certain things that I observed. And one of those things, okay, this is what happened. So I asked someone to give me a lift to go somewhere. And as we were preparing to go, they asked me if I had some cash. And I said, oh, what do you want the money for? I mean, it was a friend. I wasn't going to pay them for the lift anyway. It was going to be a free ride. They said, oh, this is to pay the police on the way. And I said, why? Because your car is in good condition. It is not like you're going to be speeding, you're going to break any law or anything like that. Why do you need to pay them? There was a reason why I was asking that question. They said, well, that's just how things are in Zimbabwe. This is the norm. That's what we do. Every day you have to make a budget to pay the police on the way, because that's how they make their money these days. They can't afford to live on their salaries. You just have to pay them. That's just how things are in Zimbabwe nowadays. And I said, are we still doing that? It's not normal though. They said, well, that's how life is, I'm afraid. And then, yeah, he had to pay the police on the way. It was just like, it wasn't like there was no discussion, no questions asked. It was kind of like an understanding. Like the driver had an understanding with the police. That is corruption. The fact that we have to pay to do things that we should be doing anyway without having to pay anyone. And that reminds me of another example. When I applied for my passport, I was renewing my passport a few years ago. So I had paid for that fast service, the one that comes out in 3 days. So I paid everything, and then the passport didn't come out in 3 days. And it turned out that the only way I was going to have that passport come out on time for me to travel, because I wanted to travel, the only way that was going to happen was if I paid some more money, if I paid someone to, expedite that process. Why are we normalizing having to pay for services that are free? And this is not the first time that it happened, and this is not the only service that I had paid for to have that service delivered to me. We've normalized paying bribes to the police to get a driver's license, to get services, government services that are supposed to be free. We've normalized that. We now see that as normal. Before we go to carry out a transaction, we have to put some money aside in our pockets just in case, or we almost always expect it to happen. That's why we always have to have that extra money What about the poor person, the person who is struggling just to put food on the table? Why do they have to be subjected to that? I mean, forget the one who is struggling. It's not even normal, even for people who can afford to pay bribes. It's not normal. I mean, having lived in the UK, this is one thing. I mean, one of many things anyway. This is one of many things that I admire about the UK. And I'll tell you something as well, and I'm talking about Africa in general. I listen to some videos made by, other people from other countries, and I listen when people are talking about Africa or when people are discussing issues, important world issues. They don't really consider Africa. This is a side note, but it's all linked as well to our standards as Zimbabweans, as Africans. Everything is linked, because this issue, whilst I'm talking about Zimbabwe, this also spreads to the whole continent. Other countries on the continent are also dealing with these issues. We're still grappling with these issues. And according to my opinion, it is because we don't have high standards for ourselves as Africans. I don't know what it is. I honestly don't know. Africans in general. Anyway, as I was saying, when I listen to these videos, when people are discussing important world issues, they don't really consider Africa. Like when they talk about Africa, they mention it in passing. I mean, sometimes they don't even factor it, because we are not seen as world players, as like key world players. We are not seen as that. We are looked down upon a lot. And yeah, there's a lot that I can unpack when it comes to that. But one thing I know as well, a contributing factor is just the way we just don't uphold certain basic standards for ourselves as a people. And I'm talking about these basic things like paying for free government services, paying someone not just for your driving lessons or, the normal things that you pay for when you're getting those things, but you have to pay extra for that process to actually go through successfully. And we have normalized things like watching sewage just flow in the streets. We have normalized just rubbish, just throwing rubbish everywhere and expecting another person to clean it up. At the moment, we have cleanup campaigns in Zimbabwe, which is held on a regular basis. And I've said it in my other video. When I saw that for the first time, I actually cried. I felt really emotional, because at one point when I was in Zimbabwe, even in my hometown, Chinhoyi, I saw rubbish everywhere and I just felt helpless. I was like, is this the town I grew up in? And there's a road in Chinhoyi where if I'm coming from the town center and I reach this vegetable market that is close to our home, there is a road, another road, where if I'm driving, I turn into that road and drive up to our home, to our house, my father's house. When I went home this time, that road, it wasn't even walkable. You couldn't drive on that road anymore. And it wasn't because of potholes. It was because cars were parked there. They were just parked in the middle of the road. And that road was closed off because somebody had just decided to just park there. It was not just one car. It was a lorry. I remember it was a lorry and a car that were parked there, blocking the road. And people were not doing anything about that. Instead, the other drivers were going round because somebody had decided to just park their car there. Why have we normalized things like that? So, yeah, I didn't understand that, because here in the UK, if a pipe bursts, if there are things like, sewage flowing, if something happens to the pipes and something, this is like an emergency. It is an emergency that needs to be sorted out, and it gets sorted out like yesterday. But why have we made that okay for ourselves? Why is it okay for us as Zimbabweans? Why have we normalized that? Why is it okay? Why is it okay? It is not easy to admit that we have allowed these issues to be a part of our daily lives. It is not easy, but I believe that Zimbabwe has potential. We can turn things around. And like I always say, it starts with our mindset. It starts with, developing better standards for ourselves, just having that dignity for ourselves, valuing ourselves as people. It is not too late. I know right now we feel crushed. Our spirits are crushed. I mean, it is not too late to change. We can change, first of all, ourselves as individuals, our mindset, those mindset shifts, just having better standards for ourselves, values, walking in dignity. Because if we all have the same standards, There's no way that we can feel comfortable being corrupt. We can feel comfortable expecting bribes or accepting bribes from another person, or even giving bribes. There's no way, because you have values, you have standards. You're going to question, you're going to challenge those things. There's absolutely no way. The time has come for us to ask ourselves, why have we allowed this to go on for so long? The first step is to recognize that these things are not normal. It is not normal. And like I said, it is not about parties. It is not about, oh, you belong to this party, you belong to that party. It's about you as a Zimbabwean citizen recognizing that these things are not normal. Nothing is normal about corruption. We deserve to have a dignified life. We deserve better infrastructure, better roads. Yes, like I always say, there is something that is happening in the country. I always say this because I don't want to ignore the good things that are happening. And I know that when I say that, I get attacked to say, what good things are you talking about? There are good things that are happening in our country. I have to acknowledge that. But at the same time, the truth remains, there are a lot of things that are still not right about our country. Things that we've normalized. Going to the hospital and not expecting to be given anything. That is not normal. So real change starts with examining ourselves first and foremost, and just recognizing that we are all responsible. That's the first thing. And also the second thing is demanding accountability from our leaders. Demanding, not even begging for it, but demanding. It is our duty as citizens to demand that accountability. We must want better for ourselves because we deserve better. We should not settle for less.